Hello everyone! Over the next 3 months, we will spend just 5 minutes a day learning the usage of 100 basic adverbs. It might be a bit challenging at first, but keep going. This is my secret technique for leveling up your English. Listening to English explanations is key to improving your listening skills and vocabulary. Today, we're going to learn about the adverb fairly. Let's start with a quiz. What does fairly mean? 1. A little. 2. Quite. 3. Slightly. The answer is number 2. Quite. Now, let's dive into today's lesson. Fairly means quite, or to a moderate degree. It also means in a fair way. It indicates that something is moderately to quite a bit. Additionally, it can mean treating something or someone in a fair manner. Let's look at how we commonly use fairly. There are 2 main usages, to indicate degree and to indicate fairness. When we use fairly to indicate degree, it shows that something is moderately to quite a bit. For example, if we're talking about someone's English skills, we might say, "She speaks English fairly well." This means she speaks English quite well. Or if we're discussing the weather, we could say, "The weather is fairly good today." This means the weather is quite good today. Now, when we use fairly to indicate fairness, it means treating something or someone in a fair manner. For instance, if we're talking about a teacher's evaluation, we might say, "The teacher treats all students fairly." This means the teacher treats all students in a fair manner. Similarly, if we're discussing competition results, we could say, "He was fairly judged in the competition." This means he was judged in a fair manner in the competition. Now, let's compare fairly with other similar adverbs. Quite, rather, and somewhat. These adverbs all indicate degree, but they have different nuances. It's important to understand these differences to use them correctly. Fairly means moderately or to a reasonable extent. It's not too strong or too weak. For example, the movie was fairly interesting. Quite means very or to a high degree. It's stronger than fairly. For example, the movie was quite interesting. Rather is often used to express something more than expected, with a sense of surprise. For example, the movie was rather interesting. Somewhat means to a small degree. It's weaker than fairly. For example, the movie was somewhat interesting. Let's look at some more comparison sentences to understand the nuances better. If you're talking about how interesting a movie was, you could say, "The movie was fairly interesting." This suggests moderate interest. Saying, "The movie was quite interesting," indicates a high degree of interest. If you say, "The movie was rather interesting," it suggests more than expected interest, possibly surprising. And, "The movie was somewhat interesting," means a little bit of interest. Or, if you're talking about someone's confidence in their presentation skills, you might say, "She is fairly confident in her presentation skills." This means she has moderate confidence. Saying, "She is quite confident in her presentation skills," indicates high confidence. "She is rather confident in her presentation skills," suggests more than expected confidence, possibly surprising. And, "She is somewhat confident in her presentation skills," means she has a little bit of confidence. Now, I want you to practice. In the comments section, try to make a sentence using fairly. I'm looking forward to reading your sentences. Let's summarize today's lesson. Fairly means quite or in a fair way. It is used to indicate degree or fairness. We also compared fairly with quite, rather, and somewhat to understand the subtle differences. See you next time.